Hi, everybody.
Your talk today is about blended reality.
Blended reality.
Blended realities.
And ice cream.
Ice cream is the most important.
Creative innovation, a recipe for creative innovation. So we're probably just going to start introducing ourselves and talk about what you guys all want to hear about in terms of VR, AR, RR, meet realities,
Reality
AI,
soup.
NFTs, all the things.
As long as it comes with meatballs.
So a little bit introduction, Miss Charlie.
So, hey y'all, my name's Charlie. I currently work at Intel. I have sort of an interesting career in that I studied industrial design, so went to art college like all of you. Quick show of hands, just kind of curious so that we can temper what we get back. Show of hands, how many people are in industry right now? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then how many of you are students or trying to break into industry right now?
Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
Yes.
Right on. Cool. We see you.
And then how many people have tried VR stuff? Okay. That's awesome.
Yay! Oh man.
Has anyone developed any VR, AR, MR things?
Oh.
That's impressive.
Wow,
Thank you for joining our talk.
We're going to be more technical next year.
We'll see how it goes. I like to be broad on the spectrum. But anyway, yes. Thank you.
So my world is that I actually build, like your other developers, I build mediums for creatives. So in my work at Intel and at Wacom and others, I try to match up the art, like the heart and soul of what you're trying to get to, or that sort of nebulous thing that's very difficult to describe. It's that, I don't know, it just feels good. I actually get to the bottom of that, and I match that up with technology and different ecosystem partners in order to design future mediums to make your life either more joyful or feel more connected to your art. So I'm a creator for creators, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I'm really lucky. I've worked with a lot of really fancy people that are cooler than I am that are those logos up there. And I'm just excited to talk to y'all today.
And hello, I'm Estella. So I am a VR, AR creative director. I've done a lot of work using virtual reality and augmented reality from an artist perspective. I went to Art Center, graduated 2016. I also worked in tech before that, so I found a way to merge the creative and the tech. And essentially what I do is work with companies like Intel and other large companies and talk about what the experience is for creatives and essentially try to help them understand, these are the tools that artists want. Okay, that's cool, the product that you're making, and also we need this. It needs to be intuitive, like you were saying, and figure out how we can use it for different use cases. I work independently, and these are the clients I work with. I got really lucky that I got into it around 2016, so my first client was Google, and I was very lucky about that. And since then, it's just timing and just working with large companies and having a business mindset is really helpful for that. So for any students, if you want to tap into this field, knowing a little bit of business definitely helps as an independent creator. Just a little tidbit.
Yeah, for sure.
And for context, what Charlie does is that she creates the tools that I get to play with and I break. So I tell companies hey, I broke this and this is what I want out of it. So I do a threshold test with what creators can push in these boundaries and be able to know what that threshold is for poly counts or how big those model sizes are.
And it's not just threshold, just to any of the other developers in the room. I think one of the important things about both your own individual mindset, it's kind of good UX principles in terms of that Estella thinks of it as oh, I'm breaking shit, but when I'm looking at it, it's we're actually trying to go beyond what technical limitations of the mindset of where it is that you're trying to go or what you're trying to do or why this I have 3 extra clicks to get here, or it's not intuitive to look for this there, or where does my body, especially in spatial types of things, how does your body movement make an imprint on how that environment interacts with you and how you interact with it?
So that's some context of where we enter the industry. And we both bridge from our understandings of design and illustration and art and how that leads into technologies. So we were last here for the first LightBox in 2019, giving a very general talk about AR, VR, and MR. And since we last spoke, as it happens in innovation, things change rapidly. There's tools that we may have mentioned 3 years ago that aren't supported anymore. The teams no longer exist. And so there's certain products that like aren't really used anymore just simply because of business. And that's kind of what I mean. Like having a sense of like what's happening in the industry kind of dictates what lasts for innovation.
Totally. No, you covered it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I love, if you may notice, we have a theme of ice cream.
We love food.
We do. We love food. So one of the things we want to talk about today is how there's confusing acronyms, and actually we're super pumped. We didn't realize so much of this audience would actually be knowledgeable about this arena. So I think if everyone just to reset that context and how it started out versus how it's going, right, is that VR was completely immersive and obfuscates your environment around you, whereas AR was very popularized by Pokemon Go, and now it's used a ton in retail and things like that, which feels a little soul-killing to artists, but...
and social media filters as well. You guys probably have tried on filters on Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah, Estella's actually designed some Snapchat filters and lenses and stuff, things that break up your face. And then mixed reality, which was kind of popularized actually more by Magic Leap, and then Microsoft adopted it, and it's kind of a battle of who invented mixed reality. But what we'll talk about a bit today is kind of how those things are starting to blend.
And so I wanted to kind of review also, like we both wanted to like review some of the terms that there's just so many names for the same sort of thing. And unless you're in the industry, like it can be very confusing. So these are all the same umbrella, these are all umbrella terms for the same type of thing. You probably heard of metaverse a lot in the last 2 years. You may have heard of XR. Spatial computing is for like the engineer nerds that we hear a lot of. And then in-camera VFX, that's another sort of thing as well. So these are a lot of terms that represent kind of this extended blended reality, these umbrella terms of this world that we're in.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, one of the things that we want to talk about and think about is considerations. And so a lot of this talk is actually dedicated to understanding the mindset of why and when to use where for what, and what's going to, actually be able to make my vision come to life, and how do I actually make money so that I'm not spending hundreds of dollars on way too many HMDs.
HMDs are head mount displays,
yes.
So headsets and stuff like that.
Thank you. Good context.
Yeah.
I work at Intel. We're very famous for our TLAs, our three-letter acronyms. Yeah. Like I said, alphabet soup. So one of the things that I like to call out is that in my work, one of the most confusing things that I think that technologists meeting with creators need to intersect is that if you think of technology like a medium, it suddenly makes a lot more sense when it comes to its application. So in my world, I try to think of these different types of technologies the same way that you would think, okay, for a certain type of painting, I might, because I need my paint to have a long period to dry, and I'm going to work it a lot, so I'm going to use oil paints. And like, if I need it to dry quickly because I've got a deadline, or maybe I just don't like that it takes weeks to dry, there's acrylic. So you have a different medium for the right application. And technology is no different. But one of the things that we see a lot, at least for like me and my team, is that when we're working with artists and creatives, like there's this pressure to learn this technology because you're afraid you're going to be left behind. And there's both truth and untruth to that. It's sort of a dialectical statement in the fact that the tools are there just as that. I might like a pen that Estella's like, that pen sucks. That pen works for me. I like the way the ink bleeds. I like a certain paper. I like the way it soaks into the page, or I like this type of style of clay. And the technology is no different. So it is very important that you're exposing yourself to it, but check in with your joy factor. Like if it doesn't sing to you, if it's not something that you're excited and curious about, if it's so bloody difficult that you're just like, ugh, then it may not be the right one. These are all just tools that are not going to leave you behind, but there's something that you can reach to for, oh, do I have an experience where I want someone to feel like they're in the world? Obviously immersive. If you're worried about interactions, or I want to have that co-presence of this sculpture, this piece of art being in my house, or having that shared visual space and not loss of like, I look like a weirdo and I'm so like, it's very, in VR, you can be a little vulnerable, like touching me, kick me sign in my back.
There's definitely rules of don't touch anyone in VR and don't make anyone throw up in VR.
Exactly. Yes. So as we go through this, after the presentation, you can also talk to us about this more. But it's just something I like to cover right quick to say, like, think of it like a medium in order to feel more open to it, to say, like, I'm going to try something new. And then if it doesn't sing to you, drop it. If it doesn't serve you, it's not your thing.
Totally.
You know?
I think, and to second all of that, like, I think as an independent creator in this space, I definitely feel the pressure to try everything. There's certain things I just can't. Actually, a lot of the work that I'm going to show you, the examples, are like my peers and colleagues who have explored it beyond what I've done. So you'll see a lot of examples here of people who really doing things that are passionate to them and using the medium that's right for that. So something I do when I think about creating pieces is think about, like, why use virtual reality? Why can I do this in paints? What justifies the use of this in VR? That's really important because that will help make the piece more impactful. So then when somebody steps into it, they're like, oh, I can only experience this in VR, or I can only experience this with the AR device. I'm like seeing the invisible in the real world around me. So just kind of think about it in those terms. So usually I think VR is, like you mentioned, I think of it as like zero opacity of the real world. And then AR is some sort of kind of revealing of something in the real life space. And mixed reality, this is really hard because it's blending so much right now. I'm like, oh, I'm stumped.
We can just refer to mixed AR and MR in the similar bucket.
Yeah, they're really blending a lot right now.
And just to Estella's points there, to kind of like contextualize that in the commercial workspace. So I know that like a lot of artists, yes, while you want to work for the Disneys of the world and the Pixars, and that's very, very exciting, there's a huge amount of career opportunities in businesses that, as the world has actually finally somewhat embraced creatives, there's also these opportunities for, like, your neighborhood dentist has a 3D character for their logo. Like, it's just crazy shit like that.
Yeah.
And so, like, in my world, we see a lot where when it comes to immersive experiences, it's about needing to be inside of somewhere, like, entirely, right? So different worlds that you're in. Maybe you're inside of a home, inside of a car. Like, in automotive, we've worked with the teams at, like, Ford, and I think Ford's the only one I can talk about publicly, actually. But they would say, like, when you're designing the interior of the car, you might be completely in an immersive landscape. And actually, further down the pipe, when they're testing UX and human factors, then we move to mixed reality because you can superimpose those graphical elements and different elements that you don't want to model out in the clay into that environment and do testing around that. So while that sounds kind of abstract, there's still creatives that need to be out there. They need to be doing the models, the visualization, the understanding of the experience, and these are really valid use cases for, like, where you can enter the market, and this is a legitimate thing that is, you know.
Yeah. So do what you enjoy doing, and we'll show you some examples of people doing that.
Here's our video blitz.
So let's see if I can get this going here. We're not going to have audio, but this is my dear friend Kevin. He loves dancing. He also loves technology and innovative technology. So he was able to do a mocap scan of himself. He got the mocap going and then be able to apply it and rig it to a character he modeled out. I think he did the model in Gravity Sketch and Blender, and then I think he used Plask AI. That was supposed to be AI. That's my bad. Anyway, but you'll see more of his work. I'm a big fan. I was just like, oh, dance in AR, that's so cool. Like, versus like using a 3D software in order to like animate that and rig it. Like, he just moves and then it moves with him. That's so cool.
And connecting that to the commercial space, like, there's actually massive teams. Like, I work with the team at Xbox and Microsoft, and there are entire teams that are dedicated to avatars and the animation of the fact that when you think about building an avatar, there's so many different interactions that you need to be prepared for and how you track the human body. That's like the technology side point. But again, back to the point of creatives, like, there's someone there designing those avatars, there's someone there that's doing that rigging, there's someone there that's responsible for, say, like my good friend Mark Coburn, who led a huge initiative around their having inclusivity, you know, having like wheelchair avatars, for instance.
And I would say also for industry, think about, like, you can pitch this to a corporation and be like, look how much money you can save. Like, I just did this on my own. Boom. Just keep that in mind. And then this other one. So this is a brand new game. This is a Meta Quest Pro. It just got announced last week, so this is like latest and greatest type stuff I'm showing you here. And that's the new headset by Meta. And this is a game by Patrick Hackett, Drew Skillman, and Ashley Pinnock. You guys might know Ashley. She wanders around here. She's from Art Center. But you guys can see that it's facial recognition, hand recognition for this mixed reality experience and game. Patrick and Drew were the founders of Tilt Brush, if you are familiar with that VR painting program. So they've moved on and are making stuff for mixed reality right now. This is just really cool because it's like having an MR headset that has facial hand recognition to be able to play a game. It's really exciting. I haven't tried the Meta Quest Pro. I think I'm supposed to try it next week at Adobe Max. So I don't have a review for it yet. Cool. And this is my friend Kevin again. He has been playing with Tilt 5, which is that platform that you see there. And you can think of it like the Star Wars chess hologram. So that exists now. So cool. And it's also, so that's the platform. He has the headset and the controller. He built out a game in Unity with his own models. And he's playing his own game right now. It's tied to Mixcast, so then it can record on this video that you can see. So what was very hard 3 years to do, to record videos of you playing mixed reality AR things, it's a lot easier now. So again, innovation works very quickly in this space. Is there something you want to point out?
Yeah, adding that to the Estella and I. So Estella is an independent freelance, and I'm the corporate bastard.
But
so
you're my corporate
bitch. Oh, am I allowed to cuss on this? Whoops. On that side of things, at least what I know that I can speak to, so in a lot of my work, we actually are trying to help blend computing to how do we make these ecosystems a bit easier to use and more fluid, as well as the fact that like everyone has these independent headsets. So if you haven't seen, at least the one that I can speak to that's public is Lenovo's Think Reality headset. And I know, well, okay, I can't say that, shoot. So like if you think about this trending towards this, like part of our thing here today is to look at is pitching this more, making sure that like when you take this back to your workplaces, you're trying to break into the workplace, that the industry is moving towards that. So the Think Reality system is a pair of glasses that matches up with your laptop. And it's similar to the approach kind of that Magic Leap took, was that it was saying like, hey, like we have this little like computer pack, and they created a linkage system. My team and I, we built this linkage system so that you could tie it into your PC as well. So when you're trying to take that approach of thinking of like this being a way that you can cut your teeth in your career, if you're really excited about this space, is that companies are more and more, it's so difficult to get into the mindset of it. And these types of use cases, particularly popularized in gaming, because gaming is such a universal experience for people to enjoy. They're seeing more and more of this be integrated into your like normal laptop ecosystem.
Actually, and Tilt 5, I guess I don't really call it hardware, the platform of which this exists, they've teamed up with Catan, so you can play Catan and MR, which is really cool. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for celebrating that with us. And then speaking of VR, AR type things, and illustration world. So Charlie and I actually had a chance to go into VR chat with some of our friends from Better Together VR. And this is actually like a con where you can go up to like artist booths and like, there's no audio, but you hear
no lines.
We're like, oh my God, this is so, and we're like, there's no line, you just come to this booth. And you can actually like flip through the art. So you can you can trigger and like look at the art. And so what happens is that you can actually select the artwork, and then like you want to buy it, and a browser window will open up. So when you come out of VR, your tabs for your browser will have that product, and you can purchase it. And it's pretty cool. Then you have a print of this thing. This was like a huge event. You wouldn't know it from here because there's no other users here, but this was a huge event in the VR space. This is 2020. And this is how we connected with our friends then. So it was like a connection point.
I've actually never met 3 of them in real life yet.
Yeah, I know.
We've been friends for like 3
And
years.
I haven't met Kevin either yet. That's right. But yeah, so we were just going around this con, just like we do at the hall here, and looking at all this artwork. So one of the audio clips of me yelling is like, "What are we doing? Why aren't we making money right now? We could be selling artwork."
I forgot. We were like, what are we doing with our lives? This is dumb.
Yeah.
We're like agonizing. We're printing things out and like sculpting this. And
this is some like really cool, innovative stuff. This is all grassroots run. There's just people out there doing this. It's so cool.
And to tie that back again to the either, and I don't know, I mean, I care about making money. I think none of us show up for work for free, but it's really nice when we enjoy it. So from that sort of commercial workspace, where we're seeing this become more popularized, especially in the ecosystems of both software, is that we'll talk about NFTs for like a hot second later, but I think it's kind of arguable about NFTs and where that came from was that actually in the virtual reality space, as this actually became like, 20 years ago, we were not ready for anything to do with XR. But today we're actually, technology's at a point where the human factors and the enjoyability of it merges together, and that's how it becomes that sort of, I like to think of XR kind of like if y'all remember when the first iPhone came out, it's like, I can touch it does more than make a call. What do I do with this? Okay, it's cute. So if you look at this landscape for a place to really cut your teeth, so from the commercial space, things like having digital keepsakes, right? There's digital fashion, there's avatar fashion. These are all these things that people, if you have that background in, particularly from a 3D modeling standpoint, or if you don't, please get yourself into experiencing some 3D modeling. Because the world is just greatly evolving towards 3D is the fastest way to 2D. But anyways, that's a different talk. So point being is that from a commercial landscape is that they're looking at these spaces of, these are retail experiences, these are places of sale, these are places of also digital keepsakes and digital identity. So these are where you can also have opportunities to either make money or work within larger companies that are building these infrastructures so that within the metaverse, right? Like, has anybody seen Ready Player One? Please tell me a lot of this audience has. Yeah. Okay. So, that truly is, I know as controversial as Mr. Zuckerberg maybe, having that universal workspace is definitely the way in which we're going. It's just a question mark of when we're going to fully arrive. But it's already placed, and I know tons of artists and creatives that are both have well-paying jobs in large companies doing this sort of thing.
Yeah. While we're talking about VR chat, wanted to also show you an example of a film that was shot entirely in VR. It's on HBO Max, I believe. It's called We Met in VR. So this has to do with people who came together in 2020 during COVID, and we were all quarantined, and they essentially formed a community with each other. And I think this person, she teaches ASL, and she does this in VR chat, which is incredible. Somebody else teaches dance, which is really neat. But they wouldn't have otherwise done so in real life because they would be too terrified to show their body in that way. There's a whole romantic story to it, which I know, for some people new to that might sound weird, but it's incredibly endearing. So something to think about, right? Just something to think about. It exists out there. There's a whole community out there where people are feeling fulfilled and connected and real connections.
There will 100% be Tinder in VR in the future. I can promise you that.
People.
You may or may not want to be there.
Yeah.
But.
So if that's your interest, keep that in mind. Gonna tap into AI a little bit. These are some. You might be terrified of AI. You might be concerned about how that relates to your job as an artist.
Can we ask a quick question?
Yes.
Has anybody here used any of the AI like DALL-E or Midjourney or? Okay, gotcha.
Okay, cool.
Who here is freaked out by AI?
A little bit.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you for being
cool.
brave. Thank you for being brave.
Yeah.
I know sometimes it's and then is everyone else pumped about AI? Really?
Or just indifferent, maybe? Indifferent? Okay.
Cool. Sweet.
I just want to we just want to show you some use cases. Maybe thank you for being curious. Stay curious with us. So these are some things I populated. It's being used readily, incredibly a lot in concept art world in terms of fast iterations and quick ideations. So we already know people in ILM and industries and stuff that are just using AI just for quick ideas. So these are some prompts and some thoughts that I threw in DALL-E. And it's kind of interesting. I thought I would throw in gouache. I'm like, God damn, this is better at gouache than me, but whatever. So what? So, but like here's some landscape stuff that's so cool. And I'm not feeling demoralized, but it's just a tool. It's just a tool. It's not gonna replace me, So just keeping that in mind. Do you have anything to add?
I'll contribute to when we go to that.
Yeah. So. Okay. And so that's kind of like pre-visualization, the previs concept phase. I wanted to run into that for anyone who's interested in like the previs stuff or biz dev. And then
oh yeah, I guess I should add that that's definitely being done hugely at studios, for the record.
Yes.
But I had one professor from the University of man, I wrote his name down somewhere, and I was like, I'm going to quote you so that this is attributed to you. But he said they're calling it artificial. Iteration.
Iterations, yeah.
Artificial iteration, which I thought was a really good way to say, like, and otherwise, like, sometimes when you have, like, a director or a client and they are like, I don't know what I like, you can throw a ton of this at them, and then you can very quickly, instead of you agonizing over, like, designing some sort of stunning thing or a gorgeous texture, you can very quickly narrow down that sort of aesthetic direction, and then it's still up to you to create the work.
Totally.
So.
And then use case of virtual reality in the filmmaking world. So both the AI for concepting could be used for film, animation, games, and such right now. This is an example of virtual scouting using virtual reality on film sets. I think this is for Game of Thrones, the last season. You can find this online for the full audio, the third floor. So they're building out the whole set. So this is all done virtually first, so they can figure out blocking, camera angles, where all the actors will be. So they're building this all out virtually. So if you think about it, they're not spending all the money doing the entire set production. So they can figure that all out, where the shots will be. They can figure out where the angles are, where the visual graphics things will be. This is all done in VR.
Yeah, and to give a quick note about that, if you're intimidated by that pipeline, the kind of short and skinny of it is that it's basic photogrammetry. There's a lot of places that are now being scanned. Right now, it's still kind of the onus is on individual studios, but you can find some places where you can either purchase models or people have put them up there as like an open source, like this place has been scanned. And so then you can get the scene. And here's what's really cool about virtual scouting, and particularly this, is anyone here a board artist of any? No? Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
This is for you. So storyboarding, in the previs and walking through shots, there's a lot of pre-planning that goes into virtual production. And so they use this in order to walk the set with the directors, with the director of photography, with the lead production designer, and the lead board artist. And what they're able to do is then take snapshots and or block things out. You can paint over and sketch in the space. Using, there's some great tools out there, like Estella mentioned earlier, like Gravity Sketch. I know a woman who's taking that photogrammetry straight into Blender, actually.
Yeah.
And you can block out that space, then jump back in and make sure that the angles or the intent that you thought you would have within that little aspect ratio rectangle is actually the angle that you wanted, instead of like drawing one and then someone says, oh, can you just go slightly, like just 2 inches to the right? And you're like,
yeah. And this one, they're using Unreal. I think the virtual scouting add-in that's in Unreal, that's built in, you can see that they would just move full walls. They just threw buildings in the background. So even if you wanted to tap into this, I would recommend just start playing with it, make some examples, put it in your portfolio, and I would just pitch it to the studios.
Yeah, and Unreal is free if you're, just an independent. If you're a studio making money with it, obviously they charge you. But it's free, and they've got some great tutorials online.
Fun fact, my art center graduation student piece that I did was using tilt brush to show blocking in a animation scene. So that was like how I started working with Google and them.
You guys feel all awkward about these big names.
I know. Ooh, I'm just the girl from Oakland. Charlie's going to jump into virtual production here.
So just from like the, I kind of, again, like I'm not going to go into super technical detail. I think other people have done talks on that, and or I can send you links to talks I've done on that if you're curious about getting into the the nerdy stuff that I do with the tech behind virtual production. But I just wanted to say that acronym is in-camera VFX, visual effects. If you don't know that acronym, that's what ICVFX is. It's another way to just refer to virtual production. And one of the most popularized things about virtual production is everyone thinks that you have to have a green screen behind you, or not a green screen, excuse me, that you have to be on an LED volume. It's called the volume stage. And that's very popular because of how Mando was shot. But actually, virtual production techniques have been used in animation for quite a while. So it's something I would definitely recommend, like why we talk about, you don't need to be an Unreal expert, but just knowing a bit around the language will help you in interfacing with the team, because you bring everything into Unreal in virtual production, and it's shot within the game engine, actually. So you're like shooting this in real time. So the generalized description, if you talk to people who've been doing virtual production for years, is just anything that's shot in real time in a game engine. The LED volume and stuff like that is optional. So just wanted to talk about like what I think is really inspiring. We were lucky enough to get to work on an awesome project. So this is the type of projects I do at Intel. We did an innovation investigation with, if you don't know the Entertainment Technology Center out of the University of Southern California, what's righteous about them is they're a nonprofit that allows big companies like mine, who would normally sit there with like guns drawn about NDAs and who owns what going into a space. They create a neutral space for us to come together in order to take our different technologies and try to explore a certain new media pipeline. And so every year they do this innovation award to a BIPOC or female graduate student. And 2021, so got a little extended because of things with COVID, was a gentleman named C. Craig Patterson, and we shot a film called Fathead. And so everything that I'm referencing from there is part of that, as well as blended with like some general virtual production techniques. But this is kind of the general layout that you can account for. And where you go from here is that the reason why this is the ultimate blended reality space is you have things like the director and your actors as well, and then you've got your prop department. And those are your real physical things. What else is on set, which is run by the virtual art department, the VAD team, they run the volume. There's camera tracking that does all those cameras on top. But the thing to think about is that it's almost like you have a matchup of an augmented reality thing being revealed that you would normally use, say, like a pair of glasses or your tablet to see. On a virtual production set, the camera reveals that. You can see it in the background, and it's being rendered by the frustum. That's that highlighted narrow rectangle, and that just essentially helps the computing deal with this incredible real-time rendering.
So what that does essentially, for those who are more like visually inclined, is like it creates the parallaxing effect behind the where the camera is facing.
Yeah.
So that looks like depth rather than recording just a screen. Like it basically tells the computer this is what the camera is looking at, and it's only going to render what the camera is looking at and create the parallaxing effects of depth using the game engine of Unreal to do that.
Yes. Well said. Well said. Mm-hmm. And so when you think of it also like a large computer, that might be your screen. Your server room is your main computer. But those are your two elements that are matched up. And then what I like to highlight is that the camera is a part of that. It's revealing. The camera is revealing to you that final pixel of bringing together what's being shot in the game engine, as well as with the actors and some of the complementary lighting that might be on stage. But yeah, if you want to learn more about that, I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but it's a really important thing as to why Estella and I's talk is so much around familiarizing yourself with these different mediums, because while they're really new right now, and you might say, oh, it's going to change tomorrow, by tomorrow, someone will have already decided what that future is, and you can be a part of that because you helped define it. And yes. So virtual production was able to be blended by that, from that immersive mindset of saying, hey, how do I blend up these digital and physical elements? And holograms are quite problematic. So it's trying to take that artistic vision of like, oh, I want to be able to transcribe worlds the way that I would in VR, but I can in set, and I'm blending it. Like we actually have the actors who would get sick. We have this tunnel scene where they're like racing in cars, and it's so immersive because you're on this massive volume stage and the screen, and you're actually getting kind of nauseous because everything around you is moving the way that you would in VR, but it's not, it's interacting with you.
So what that says to me is that the brain thinks it's real.
That
if
was
the
like
brain
a
and the
huge
body
aha
thinks
moment
it's
for us.
real, if they're feeling nauseous, it's like, whoa, something's happening there. And I always get curious about that. Yeah. I would also say like this is also a blending of industries, and part of like the reason why we want to share these different examples is like these are people who used to work on games, And now they're also working on film sets for like Mandalorian and all these like huge, big blockbuster movies. I haven't been able to detect when an LED volume's used yet, but like visually, I want to be able to like watch a movie like that's an LED volume, and I know which one that is.
Westworld. If y'all saw the recent series of Westworld, a lot of that was shot in virtual production.
It's for context, it's much more controllable in terms of lighting. You don't have to, if it's like golden hour when you're shooting a scene, it can be golden hour for like 2 days when it's set that way.
Exactly.
You don't have to just go on set like, oh, we only have like half an hour to shoot this, look at the lights changing, all this stuff. Everyone move the sets and all that stuff. Like you have a controlled setting for lighting, and that's why it's so key for filmmaking. So anyway, that's why context of like learning game engines, learning about how that all is used for filmmaking or for animation, like these things are all kind of bridging and coming together right now. Here's an example. I wanted to show a little bit more of more examples of people doing stuff that they love. This is an AI-generated fashion like line that Karen worked on, so which is like really cool. So if you guys didn't catch that, she used DALL-E to like kind of mask out herself and then be able to throw outfits on herself. So if you're interested in fashion, that's another thing you could do. It's really bomb. Next up, we have Heather. She did some stuff using an Apple Watch to show a hologram come out. I think that's a really cool use case of kind of taking something, like making a surprise out of something you wouldn't usually see.
And it's another example of that blended reality approach, right? You're having an augmented reality experience. It's something that you're then starting to believe is physically present with you. So that's the blending of technologies. Cool. Now we're going to talk about tools a little bit.
Immersive tools, these are the most popular ones right now.
All right,
Feel free to take pictures.
This is my part then. All right, so the reason why I want y'all to know we want y'all to know these tools is one, there are ways to explore these. Some of these are free. Gravity Sketch is pretty low entry. But what's really important about these is the context of how they're being used. So Gravity Sketch is actually the first, or I think they're the first, virtual reality sub-D modeling program. They started out doing more like NURBS and T-splines in the industrial design space, and they had some elements of tilt brushy in that you have like painting and sketching within Gravity Sketch. And then they opened up sub-D modeling and collaboration. It's just amazing. I know the founders of the company. They've just done such a dope job. But what's really rad about Gravity Sketch, if you invest in a program like that, is that it's basically the main one recognized by commercial in terms of saying like, oh, like I know that you're producing something that is in the pipeline that my team is familiar with and that we're using. Currently, like I said, I do reference a lot of automotive examples. There are other examples in which this is being done a ton in filmmaking. Yes. Where you need an artist, kind of the way that you have like Unreal artists or a lead for this. You have someone that's having the lead around the immersive, they're responsible for the immersive technology, and they're the ones that are going to be working together with the Unreal person in order to design those environments and walk through them with the artist. So there's these emerging sort of job opportunities of jobs that don't exist today that are starting to become into existence. So. And
as I mentioned, like Tilt Brush before, that's a team that no longer is supported at Google. That's just something I know in the industry. The founders were amazing. They made it open source. So now OpenBrush is something that if you know a programmer, team up with them and make that your own custom tool. It's fucking bomb.
So then when you think about it in terms of programs, like you can look at things like Shapes is actually just like what it says. It's Shapes. They started out in architectural, and if you know anything about additive manufacturing, it's type of that approach. Gravity Sketch is going to give you more of that, your like fluid and like flexible environment in sub-D modeling, right? More of your ZBrush type of experience or Mudbox type of experience. Substance is, now there's Substance Modeler, which was originally Oculus's medium that Adobe's made some really smart acquisitions. They are doing a good job. And then if you look at companies like Spatial, what's important about that is that those are companies that are like making their entire practice around collaborative spaces. So you can bring in things, you can meet with your friends and that, you can do design reviews. Mattel is most, I think, famously accredited with like the first like very open commercial experience about how the fact that their team embraced this. So they're a toy design company. And actually, I know a lot of creative artists that end up in toy design. It's where industrial and media and entertainment can start to blend. You know, like a job that you might think that you would have because you're, oh, I'm a character designer. Well, actually, I know a lot of brilliant character designers who ended up going into toy design. So another way that you can look at where your future career goes.
Mm-hmm. Here's some modeling programs. You guys have probably heard of Blender, Maya, SolidWorks, Fusion 360, Autodesk Alias. These are just kind of, again, take pictures if you guys want to, research them, figure out what works best for you, try them out.
Yeah, I can say one of the things I really want to credit Autodesk with being future thinking is they took their VR approach and they decided to integrate it with their 3D apps. So when you subscribe to an Autodesk membership, you can get like Alias VR or Maya VR. Like, so they are taking that same parity of their UI UX approach that they have across their programs, and they're linking that into their virtual environments. And why that's important for you is that when you invest your time, right, into learning a UI or a program or a certain interaction in that space, you develop that muscle memory. And so that's one of the things I really like about their company in terms of exploring their tools, is that when you invest that time, I can definitely, from what we've seen, they're going to be moving towards that. I'm like, what I can say? Towards that type of ecosystem that's really convenient. And then a lot of these are also like standard tools that you would use even outside of VR, but have embraced the ability to go in and out of that space. So I'm very passionate about it.
Game engines, Unreal, Unity, those are still the big hitters right now in the industry. Otherwise, people make their own game engines. That is always impressive to me. Yeah. But these ones are free. I think Unreal's free as well. Yeah, you mentioned Unreal is free.
Unreal is
They're
free.
both
And I think,
free.
I think Unity's free,
yeah, Unity's free. And then you can just start making stuff, try it out, do some tutorials, get some basics of that, make a little game.
Yeah.
Here are some augmented reality apps. Procreate actually has an AR component to it. TikTok, Snapchat, Adobe Aero, Till 5 was the platform I mentioned earlier, and if you guys are intimidated by AR, actually everyone here has used AR. If you've been in a restaurant where there's a QR code and you have to use that to open a menu, you've already used AR.
There's over 2 billion AR-enabled devices in the world. So when you think about creating something that has a huge impact, a lot of people look at XR spaces and be like, oh, it's this only tiny little niche. It's like, actually, like you can, it's really ripe for innovation. It's really ripe for a way to have unique experiences. People are creating their own custom avatars, and then I can just take my iPhone and like place it on a table. My buddy just sent me a character design, and I'm trying to see how it feels in space.
Yeah.
So these are things that people are doing, and it also really helps you to get your point across. I think we've all had that very difficult director or manager or just instance in which you're like, why can't you see my vision? And for some people, that translation to seeing it have like a co-presence to you or a volumetric, like a presence in space, it can really, really help in translating, for someone to understand where you're coming from and to just yield that higher batting rate for getting your design move forward.
Yeah, it's like a felt experience for that.
Unless your boss will just think you're dope.
All right, we're going to tap into the weird shit. Here we go. NFTs, here we go.
And then do we have the room till 10 after because they were late from the previous? I didn't know.
I think we're good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just wanted to double check on time.
This is my good friend, Sutu Eats Flies is his name. So here are some NFTs. You guys probably have seen it, artists like selling a whole bunch of pieces, just like he animates his, which I think is great. You can definitely read about it. You can read about how artists are making money making cryptocurrencies off of digital pieces.
Blockchain for Etsy.
Yeah, so you'll definitely read a lot about that. I just wanted to show Sutu's because I think he approaches it a bit differently from other people in the ways that this is just like animated and great. It's not just like a one-off piece of a monkey, a bored monkey and such like that. So, reach out, like just explore that a bit. And I also wanted to show some cases of that aren't what you're probably used to seeing. So a friend of ours worked on an NFT for a high-end wine company. So how does wine lead into NFTs, you ask? It's a great question. So what they're selling is an experience, right? So these are like, the audience is like people who buy really prestigious wines. They want to be exclusive, which is perfect for NFTs. They want it to be a community of exclusive people among themselves, which is perfect for NFTs. And then have something that they can show off to people, right? So these are kind of like the makings of things that make it more of a more valuable experience.
Yeah, it's a collectible. We all have collectibles, right?
So for each wine that you get a digital cork. And here's an example from their website, Divin, D-V-I-N, is Club Divin. And so this is AI-generated art pieces. So it's just really cool. It's like using
But not AI generated like you're thinking, for the record. The designer of this input things, his whole pipeline I can't speak perfectly to, but it's he didn't like put prompts in a
not like that,
in an algorithm and then it spit it out. He actually designed and modeled and then did custom code.
It's computer generated. Computer generated.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
I was like, whoa.
Which. That's blending, obviously. So even between us, we're like, you're right. It's not AI, but it's computer generated. Anyway,
we'll just show a couple more cases of I just wanted to give a quick shout out if y'all haven't seen the work by Martin Rubinkowski. Hope I'm not ruining his name. He gave a talk earlier in the system about AI, and so I really liked how he had wrote things. So while mine are in my own verbiage, I just really credit him with like synthesizing like what we had seen out in the workplace around that. AI is really good for concepting, is really good for photo bashing. So you might generate this, I'm just gonna do one tab, this alien ice cream, but you actually needed an alien ice cream with a body. And so what you'll end up doing is like bringing different variations of that into Photoshop, then you kit bash out, you bring different things, you might clone stamp it, you might cut little different bits, and you start to hack together this really quick concept. And that's what we mean about concept with AI, is that you still have to have, like, it's not doing this for you, it's quickly establishing a direction, it's helping you when like, oh fuck, the blank canvas, like that stress of like, where do I start? It's also helping establish your design language and visual language within the team and with the director. But what you can do is then you photo bash that together. So it's really great for iterations. This is something that's being used a lot just to be able to help establish that direction and get ideas. What I really want people to know is just it won't replace your art. It cannot replace your art. There's probably an art form to how people are giving the prompts because you're essentially teaching a computer, and that's where Estella and I talk a lot about how creative drives technology, technology drives creative. It's kind of this endless cycle. And so there's definitely going to be an art form, I'm sure, for some really fun things for writers out in the world. But it's still something that you have to be able to like take that direction with. And a good example that we had between Estella and my work was that Estella used DALL-E and she just put alien and ice cream. And
I love these.
This is pretty good. I took Midjourney, and I'll talk about the differences between those two right quick, but I took Midjourney and I put, alien and ice cream, and the first three and then the fourth on the bottom left are what I got. So radically, radically different.
Yeah.
And then I added alien plus ice cream plus happy plus ears, like trying to get like in the direction.
There's a really gnarly one right here. That one's gnarly.
So it's there's different platforms, different tools have different experiences. From what I know of, or like the feedback that we're getting is that DALL-E or I forget the name of the other, but they tend to be a bit more stiff, whereas like Midjourney is kind of representative of Midjourney. It tends to be a bit more loose, so you're getting a wider sense of variations, but you may not be able to drill down the way you might with a more precise program, like one of the ones that is going to just take that direction and be like, here's your direction, whereas Midjourney is going to give you a wider range and a bit softer in exploring that.
All right, so what are some predictions? Should we leave that for Q&A, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I can zip through this because I know we really want to give y'all some time, but we do want to give a quick shout out. So in just reminding you to embrace these as mediums, there are 3 badass humans I want to call out that their careers were made by embracing innovation, and there's countless examples of this. These are just personal friends. One right here. Chris, it's my friend right there who always like probably shuddering and like, thank God I have a mask on. He lost his job. Like we're older millennials and we got really harmed by the recession. It was super, super hard to have that level of experience when it hit. And in that time, Chris took the initiative to be like, well, what's going on in industry? How can I better myself? And ZBrush was just at its infancy. I know I'm dating us, but, and he self-taught and landed his next job, and now he's a hella successful, well-credited, award-winning artist. But at the time, clay modelers were like, F ZBrush, no, I hate ZBrush. I still talk to modelers today who are like, no. And it's like, okay, if that medium doesn't speak to you, it's like, if I'm not feeling that, my job is to try and make it feel like that, actually. But he took that and ran with it, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna embrace this tool, and it's vetted his entire career from it. Kay, which everyone probably well knows, Kay and Bobby, and the whole team. So if you don't know the backstory behind Nico and the Sword of Light, their animated series that's on Amazon Prime, where it started was just an interactive webcomic. iPad was still kind of like new. Webcomics were pretty new. It was in 2013, and they really wanted to see this vision come to life. They did a Kickstarter campaign. They enrolled their friends. It debuted on the iPad, and there was so little content of that kind at the time that it took off. It was reproduced in 30 countries, and eventually then, was pitched and accepted by Amazon, and is now in its second season. So again, kind of like the way that you can look at these mediums of, let me explore this space and what does this mean to me? Instead of fighting it, let me roll with it and see which one feels good and feels connected to how I see the world and how I interact with that art. You can just really vet your career. And then lastly, Estella here, I asked her for permission with this, but, or actually you should speak to your story on that. And then we can move into QA.
Yes. So one of my limitations, actually, I have had tendonitis and pain in my arm before I even went to Art Center. That's from my tech days of coding too much. And so a lot of my Art Center friends know that I had a lot of limitations of what I could paint. And to get better, to get into the industry, you just have to be good at whipping out paintings, and that's the better that you get. And I knew I couldn't. I'm just not that good. And I just couldn't. I just physically couldn't. And I needed to get sleep because I was older than everyone too. Well, you can't tell, but I was like, I need to get sleep. And I started painting with my left hand a little bit in order to get through the assignments. But I knew at the end of the day that I wouldn't survive in the animation industry. So I got smart. I found another way to find my way out and created my own career. I dove into VR. I tried it out because I'm the only one that kind of had that tech and storytelling background. And my mentor, Bob Cotto, said, they're going to hire you for your brain. It's not just what you do. It's because of how you think. I'm like, oh, dang, man. All right, that's some good wisdom
really,
right
there. Really good wisdom.
Yeah, so that's kind of the start of how I began, and it's kind of the weird blessing in disguise. So just kind of keep that in mind. Sometimes life can be hard. Hopefully you can find a silver lining. Think about other options. If you keep your eyes open to other options, you might find another way.
Totally. And then we'll just end up with, this is our personal innovation recipe for success. Everybody has their different approaches, but when people try to tell me like innovation is really hard, and let me tell you, it's really fucking hard.
It's really hard.
I'm exhausted. I'm so tired from trying to convince people that shit's relevant. I'm like,
if you guys don't follow me on social media, I also work at a plant nursery. That's how I calm myself. So I sell plants for half of my week. So I'm just like, this is how I deal with it, because that won't change.
Yeah.
I'm just selling you a plant.
Yeah. You need to be optimistic. You've got to be endlessly curious. You have to be open-minded, right? Curiosity is let me see how this feels. You need to be brave enough to look stupid. You've got to have a good dose of humility when you were wrong or somebody's doing it better, or just you tried to force it into something that it did not work. And you have to be really tenacious. Innovation or embracing these new things, like I think part of like just finding what serves you in your life, and Estella and I are very big on mental health, is that like,
yes.
I don't know any other way. It's like I'm broken. I have to continue to look for that new next thing. And so it can help you in your career to find that thing, but then own that thing and just let it be yours and, stick with it. Absolutely stick with it.
And I would say also, like, I think for both of us, we like so many things.
Oh yeah,
and
being
like
polymath.
that was something that, like, for me, that I realized, like, I fit so well in innovation because I've changed careers like 3 or 4 times. And they're like, why do you keep changing careers?
Oh yeah,
and
anybody here like get that? Where they're like, I don't know what you do, or you do so many things.
Yeah, like innovation could be great for you because it changes regularly. Yep. It's tough, but it's really rewarding in that way because you're like, the first person to do this and XYZ. My friends Bats and Eric are here. They were like the first ones to get a VR painting for a wedding. Like oh, wow, so cool. Right? like, oh, so cool. All right. Yeah, so very fun.
Q&A, and here's how to get in touch with us. And thank you so much. And
Yeah,
questions.
we'll stick around for some questions. And we have some little prizes for. Yeah. We have some little gifts and prizes
So
as
the
well.
gentleman back there in the blue shirt or navy shirt, navy shirt. Oh yeah, it is blue. Okay, blue and navy, like that monochrome, shades there.
Oh, I think we should pass a mic to him. I think maybe.
yeah.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get this. Okay. Here you go.
Yeah.
I don't know how to.
You get a reward for being brave.
Okay. Here you go. Oh, she's gonna go with you.
Oh shit! Sorry. Stay, Chili. This is our third presenter here today. This is my service animal, Chili. So, hi. Hi. Come here. Good girl. All right, can you sit? Stay. Yes.
No.
Cool. Okay, so this question actually is for you, Charlie. You had mentioned that you create tools to create tools. That's kind of what I do. So I'm curious what that means for you.
Oh, okay, cool. I think my ultimate task. Sorry, I took her off her leash and she's like, woo. So my biggest thing with tools is that. Cool. It took me a reason to, I'm sure a lot of people know Simon Sinek, the Find Your Why. For me, my why is joy. I went to art school. I have nauseating, terrific imposter syndrome because I don't have art to show you. And I felt like a failure, to be quite honest, for a lot of years because of that. I was like, all my friends are doing this amazing things, they're creating these beautiful things, and I couldn't explain how my brain thinks. But I knew that I was such a good problem solver. And I realized that in studying, I did this work, when I worked at Wacom, I had the fortune of, across a 5-year time span, working with hundreds of huge design teams. And it exposed me to a bunch of creatives that I was like, man, we're all saying the same thing. We use different words, but we're saying the same thing. And it's this, I want to feel connected to my work. And I realized that is what had happened to me, is that part of why I focused on problems was that the stuff that I enjoyed doing were these like dorky clay characters and things that, I don't know, maybe I should have believed in myself more, but I was like, well, I don't want to make a living on this. I'm not that talented. But I was like, I know that my talent is solving problems. And so for me, creating a tool means that it's joyful to use it. That is like that's like my reason for being. It's the reason I'm able to continue to wake up every day and work the hours that I do and go through just so many like heartbreaking no's and still just say, well, you're saying that now, but I'll ask you tomorrow. So my job for tools is that I just want it to be joyful to use. I want it to inspire someone that they want to keep using it so that they feel good and they're happy,
I'll be the runner here. How about this? I'll trade you. All right, any other questions? There's the ice cream for anyone who has a question.
Thank you. Okay, so my background, I'm 2D animation mostly. I don't know a ton of stuff about tech, but I was curious, why is Unreal kind of leading in this whole, is it virtual production, is that correct? As opposed to Unity or other game engine?
Well, so a little bit of background about Unreal is that, so a little background about Unreal is that, they kind of were known for being like the highest fidelity AAA game type of game engine. And Unity, I think first, and I'm not making this comment because this is not opinions reflected by Intel, but Unity was a lot friendlier to use and a lot easier. And they were free first, actually, I think. So, but Unreal has a lot of tools that I think just for being known for that higher quality, that hyper-realistic experience, that, AAA experience, and it just had a diversity of tool sets. That being said, Unity is also being used in virtual production. I think that, just in the spectrum of like where companies kind of, I came out with this first and you came out with that next, but maybe it's better. I don't know. We all fight each other for this. That Unreal was kind of first to the market in being able to be used in virtual production and have the quality that they were looking for.
And I would say a huge component of that is that you don't need to know how to code to use Unreal.
Yes.
So that's a huge component for like filmmakers right now, that you can use blueprints to do visual node development for programming.
So follow up, would you think that, sorry.
Yeah. I just want all this to be captured. The audio needs this.
Do you think that that would kind of stay with Unreal, or do you think more like software similar to these game engines or channeling even into virtual production might arise, or are they? I'm kind of out of the loop.
So there's a lot of plugins out there, what people are doing now, because a game engine is so phenomenally complicated to make, that I think like you'll see Unity and Unreal still being the two main ones. And as long as you're familiar with the game engine, you don't even need to become a specialist. Honestly, at that point, if it doesn't speak to you, there's going to be a bottleneck for the Unreal person. It's just about knowing the language and being able to open your assets in that environment and be able to pan around, take shots, and communicate with the team.
Yeah, so for myself, like I know enough Unity to be able to talk to a developer. I myself will not want to develop because that's not what I am passionate about, and someone else will go a lot further for that. And so oftentimes, like I'll team up with an engineer or programmer and a developer to be able to like show them like, hey, this is my vision for it. I want to be able to do this. Would you be able to integrate some of these interactions into this? And this is how I would want it. What do you recommend? What do you want from this as well? So that's the collaborative part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh my God. Okay, let me grab your like special treat. This is me like normal. Yes.
Okay, we were like so excited to do this. We were like, how do we hand out ice cream?
I'm super excited about space ice cream. Thank you so much. So this is like, yeah, so I'm definitely in y'all space. I'm super excited you guys came and talked. And so maybe this is, yeah, it wasn't on the spreadsheet, but, or sorry, this is a something.
Like we didn't
Yeah.
know how technical the audience was going to be, so we actually stayed a little bit more global because we were like, oh, you know, like there's something
Yeah.
we should like address. But
All right, cool, yeah. So I'm spending a ton of time in WebGL lately. And so, yeah, I wonder if you guys have insights into that world, and then also the applications of like GLTF or versus like USDZ.
Oh my
or
gosh.
If you guys want to nerd out later, where I'm totally available.
You asked.
I'm addressing the US, I have terrible dyslexia, so I mess up
USDZ.
file names, but
GLTF.
I can say from the like where the future is going, and we talk about this a lot, is that interoperability is key. A lot of companies have fought really hard to keep their walled ecosystems, their walled gardens. There's a certain fruit that's difficult about that. But
I like the fruit.
I like them too. But I don't know, I'm conflicted.
Okay.
And I bleed blue. Like, watch, I can't send this to my boss.
Other people who don't know the tech stuff, they're like, what are they talking about?
But no, so I think when it comes to file formats, like one of the biggest things that we will see is that interoperability. So if you haven't, for anyone here who hasn't used Omniverse, and or when you're developing tools that look at those sort of ecosystems, that's another great thing about extended reality is that it is allowing you to bring you can bring in your FBX, your OBJ, your PSD, like, in the, what I'm most known for is this, I led a team that we designed this first mixed reality space with Magic Leap and for like creatives. And we were able to both run ink as well as have 2D and 3D files in there. So I would definitely say from a development standpoint, having that flexibility and or like looking at the key elements around interoperability without data loss is one of the hugest pain points I think we've all suffered. It's like you go from like one program to the next and you're like, what? And the WebGL one definitely would have to be a longer conversation.
So I would say there's a huge need for some sort of program to be able to convert those 3D files to get them all to play in the same platform still. This has been an issue for me because I've worked in all these VR platforms and be able to get them into AR, first of all, will break it. That just will happen. But getting them to any other software, there's always some sort of conversion issue or a fidelity issue that something will break. So if you have a programmer friend that is like trying to make lots of money, that's what we need. We need someone to be able to create a platform for all the 3D files to be able to like play well, so that they can like
looks at me,
so that they can then go into wherever it needs to go. And so kind of going back to WebGL, in terms of the web platform, I still think that's a really great place for accessibility. I myself haven't dabbled as much into it. I like that most of it is open source. I'm a big fan of open source, to be able to iterate, and especially in innovation, that's really important.
That's Blender for you as well. You know, I think taking that open source, and a lot of the projects we're working on are looking towards open source as well. Instead of taking like the differentiated, like, oh, I can do this and nobody else can, it's more like we've made this possible so that everyone can come play.
Right.
Sort of thing.
I still am on the train of like that's where we are in the innovation space for this. Like the more people that experiment, which is why like, hey, creatives, the more you play with it, the more creative you get with this industry and this medium, it gives people an opportunity to do more stuff with it. So your work will help define what that is. I know a lot of that might have been really technical, but essentially it's like, I have this PSD format. Why is it not working with this AI format? How do I like get them to play in the same space together? That's kind of what's happening in the technical space.
You can even see that in a small way, right? Like even in like, if you look at like a great, I think, example of interoperability or like flexible file types is Fresco. I give Adobe mad props to make the first program that you could just draw between raster and vector on different layers.
Yes.
Thank God.
And you can blend the paints. So it
you.
blends.
Like,
It's really cool.
so, yeah.
I think we have one more question we can help answer.
We're good. Well, before y'all leave, can I ask you a super nerdy thing? This is our second time doing this, and I would love to take a selfie with y'all. Because me and Estella are just like so proud of all the things we've gotten to do. This is just for our like loserness, and then be like, we did this. We
did this.
Okay, go.
Okay. Any other questions first before we wrap up? Yes. Thank you. Here you go. There's your ice cream. I know.
First of all, thank you for this talk. It's really inspiring to see two women in this space, for sure. Also, I love the ice cream theme.
Yes.
Very appreciated.
Yes, you can still have. We're very proud. This is constantly. There's so much sexism. You guys, okay. Yeah, thank you. Just thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you mentioned earlier, it was like a side comment about AR being maybe soul-sucking for creatives. Is that why? I'm just curious what you mean by that. Or just like...
Oh, I think, were you mean, like, when I was referring to the commercial landscape in terms of like that sometimes both the technical aspects and or the commercial landscapes of doing like non-character things that it may feel soul-sucking. I was trying to...
Oh, like commercial stuff.
Yeah, like
yes,
that
yes.
Getting into the commercial space can be soul-sucking, and what I wanted to highlight there is actually very particularly from a mental health space. Myself and every friend I know in the creative industry has struggled with mental health.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about working at maybe not like that you're not at this Pixar film that makes you cry and it reminds you of your grandmother and your third ex-cousin that died of cancer, like, or whatever. Like it. Sorry, I got a little dark there. I can do that. So the whole point of that is that I recently, in the last 2 years, finally learned what work-life balance is, and it's that there's something beyond work. And so sometimes because we are so passionate about what we do, we lose our way between like what is us and what is the work, and you can lose your identity that way. And then when anything goes wrong with it, it's like, oh my God. So I try to promote that I'm saying like it's a good mental health balance, and it actually can be very rewarding because you're seeing your things out in a way like joining Intel. I was really anxious because it was the hugest company I'd ever worked for, but I had the opportunity to impact millions upon billions of users. And so while it is a corporate landscape, I'm like, I get to help make such a huge impact in making people's lives better. So there's that.
Yeah, and for me, I don't mind working with giant companies to paint cool stuff at their events. Like that's really cool for me. And then every so often I'll do some gigs that I may be less passionate about. But it's always a positive experience for myself. And I'm very privileged and lucky as an independent creator to be able to be picky about which gigs I want to do. And at the same time,
Don't do shit for free.
no, never. We're like zero laughing because we're like, no, just no.
And if whatever you're charging, you probably should double it.
Yeah,
I'm
and
also
if you're a
saying that.
person of color and you're a woman, you should definitely double it
Yes.
or triple it.
100%.
This is no joke. This is a very personal thing.
No
I
joke,
have
like, everybody I hire, I'm like, no, you're charging too little.
I have a picture of an inner white man that's like next to he's like next to my desk. His name is Charles DeWitt, and when I look at him, I'm like, this guy's asking for 3 times more than I'm asking for, so I better put that number down when I email to this response. And my boyfriend's like, first time he came over, he's like, what is this? And I'm like, it's the whole story. It helps with my creative, like, entrepreneurial, like, hustle brain. It's like, yeah. Anyway, so that's a little bit of us. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Oh, picture. Oh, picture.
Yeah.